everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Accommodation Show. Welcome to the show, Dennis.
Thank you, Bart.
I'm super pumped to have you on the show. You're representing Casiola, which is an awesome short-term rental company in Orlando. I know that you're doing fantastic things. We met at the VRMA conference. Before we get going, I would love you to introduce the company. Introduce yourself in your name, and I know that your name and surname is just as complicated as mine, so I'm Bartek Sobiestruk. Tell everybody a little bit about your business and clear up the name for us.
Yeah, so the original Dutch pronunciation of my last name is Goedheid, and it's actually the literal translation of the word goodness in Dutch. So my name is Dennis Goedheid. I'm the founder and CEO of Casiola Vacation Homes, and we are a full-service property management company. And we manage homes in Orlando, as you mentioned, but also in Aruba, and since last month also in Miami.
Yeah, awesome. And how big is the business, and how long have you guys been doing what you are doing?
So we started in 2014. Basically, it was just me and my wife in the beginning, and we acquired a small existing business with 25 properties, all located in one resort. Right now, we manage around 350 properties over those 3 destinations.
Yeah, wow. And look, I met you at the VRMA.
Mm-hmm.
I met you at the bookdirect show. That's where I met you.
Yeah.
And then I didn't forget you because of your branding. I remember talking to a friend and they're saying, of course, I know Casiola because of the pink shirts.
Yeah.
So I love the branding part. And if for anyone that's listening, if you want to see things done really well from a branding and marketing perspective, from my point of view, you're definitely in the top tier. So have a look at their website, have a look at what they're doing. Today's episode, though, before I get too far into branding and marketing and all of that, I really want to cover off this kind of Airbnb bust, which is coming, because I think that it's an important topic. It's a topic that a lot of people will be worrying about. What are we going to do if bookings slow down? What are we going to do if we can't rely just on one channel? What are we going to do if interest rates keep on rising and our obligations to banks keep on rising? What is going to happen in a recessionary environment? And from Dennis's perspective, because we were talking before, how is Casiola thinking about this? And are they preparing for a potential downturn in the market? So that's what we're covering today. Tell me, just before we'll go back to that topic, but just before we do, just the branding part. Tell me about the colors and your thinking behind it.
So it's funny that you mentioned that, because indeed our color is probably what stands out most of the brand. A lot of people remember those pink shirts, and officially it's not pink, it's magenta. But they remember the color. They don't remember me or my name or the company name, but they do remember the color. And it actually started when I was getting ready to move to the US and looking to start into property management. I did some market research, and one of the things I did is I searched online for every competitor in the Orlando area that I could find, and I copy and pasted all their logos on one big sheet just for me to have a visual overview. And when we started creating our logo, I picked the exact opposite of the colors of all these other logos. So I picked a color that no one else had, that really would stand out across the competition. And that happened to be pink, and I thought, okay, it's probably also it's not a very feminine pink. It's something that stands out. That's a little bit harder, but it also attracts like the women that are doing most of the planning on Disney trips when we start in Orlando. So I think it really works well. And in the beginning, it wasn't as prominent as it is right now. When I went to conferences or events, I was suiting up and wearing a tie and a nice suit up until one day someone came to me at a conference and he said, "Oh, I remember you from another event where I didn't have the time to change and I was just wearing my polo that you see here." And I thought that day, like, oh my god, this color is actually so strong. And that was the last time ever that I wore a suit for a company event. So from now on, doesn't matter where you're gonna see me or the rest of the team, we're always gonna be wearing those pink polos. And the same with our vans, with our branding, with our signs. Everywhere you see them from a mile away, and it's such a strong part of the brand.
I absolutely love the story, and it makes so much sense. I love how you came to the conclusions that you came to. It wasn't like with this vision that I'm going to wear these shirts at a conference. That kind of came later, but it's sort of that iterating on what you're doing and going, oh, okay, I don't want to wear a suit. If I wear the shirt, I'm going to get far more traction and exposure. Just to finish this one off, tell me the assets in your properties. So tying the brand from I guess social media, people aspiring, then they jump onto the website, and then they've got the same colors and same theme. When they get to the property, I'm not talking about digital. I'm talking about actually on-site marketing. What do you have in the properties?
So again, the pink is such a strong color, so our signage really stands out. We have like stickers, for example, for the AC with an advice on not putting temperature too low or too high. We have pool signs, we have barbecue signs, we have keep doors closed signs, all those different signs that are pink circles, a little bit like what you see here, but more smaller. And when you're just standing in the property and you look around, you see that it's a Casiola property because of this, because they're not. You see that it's not part of the property, that it's signage, but it ties in with the brand. And of course, we also have like brochures and home guides inside the home, which also adds something extra. But you should really see that you're in a Casiola property without it being too branded. We're not gonna have like pink bedspreads or pink sofas in the properties, but we try to do it just enough that you know that you have been in a Casiola property.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And look, I'm sorry to do this to you folks. This is a topic that we're going to go back to and explore in depth. Branding, marketing, scaling a business, and what Casiola are doing, and some of these fundamentals that we'll take away. So, mark my words, that episode will come. But today, which I think is more important, is we've got to switch back, Dennis. I'm sorry, we have to switch back to what's happening right now, where we're getting to a stage where there's a lot more risk coming into this particular industry. There's been a huge amount of scaling around us, a lot of competition coming into the market, and there's been an Airbnb bust terminology or hashtag that's sort of coming up, and people are starting to really worry. So from people kind of worrying, there's a concept here, now it's in their face, and the media's picking up on it and going, all right, what are the consequences going to be? Let's start off with there. One, have you heard of the Airbnb bust coming, and what are your thoughts?
There is a lot of talk about that, of course, so I definitely heard about it. Now, on the other side, we have been using Airbnb almost all the way from the beginning, when they were not popular at all. It started out as a really small channel for us, but it always has done really well. So from the beginning, we have been very active on Airbnb, and I think a big part of our growth, and I'm going to be honest, is thanks to Airbnb. When I just started, we were the only management company at the resort where we were managing homes that was on Airbnb. No one else had even listings on it, and then as they grew, we were growing with them because we had so much demand. And then, of course, later on, everybody else started to get on too. But what we have seen in the last 2 years on Airbnb and in short-term rental space in general is almost like a classic bubble. Too many people have gotten into the space at the same time in a crazy real estate market with very cheap money. So there is absolutely an oversupply right now. I also think there's a lot more awareness of the space and vacation rentals in general, thanks to the pandemic and thanks to Airbnb going public, and they've done an amazing job in making people that never stayed in short-term rentals aware of what we do. But I think too many people got in at probably not the best timing from an investment standpoint, and then you also have like the rental arbitrage gurus that sell the dream, become a millionaire in a few months without using your own money, and they call it like passive income. Everybody in the space that knows that short-term rentals are everything except passive income. So, but it's a nice thought, of course, that you can make millions without having to do anything, without using your own money, and of course that created yeah, a lot of money getting into the space, and many spaces or locations an oversupply.
Yeah, and look, you've touched on so many fantastic points, and that's why I had to get a piece of paper and start writing them down so I don't forget them and I can come back to them. Because there's sort of two things I want to talk about. Is we definitely want to talk about what Casiola is doing and what you're thinking at this stage, and that's what this show is all about sharing what you're doing, so that then you can learn from other people as to what they're doing, so that we can all get better during these circumstances. There's another thing that I want to point out for those that are listening. This Airbnb bust is not, we're not just talking about Airbnb as well. There's also, it's a general slowdown in the market. Just saying, hey, if you get into a recession, then there's the traveler demographic and the demand is going to change. So we have to deal with that and figure out who's still traveling, who's not going to be traveling anymore, and what we're going to do with those people that are traveling. And then what do we do with the supply of stock that we can't fill? So if you're in a hotel or a motel, this conversation is also pertinent to you, and it might just apply a little bit differently depending on what you actually have to offer. The oversupply part, I really want to talk about that, and this will go back to, this is probably more short-term rentals, but hotels as well, but I don't want to talk about that now. I remember, I think it was towards the end of the pandemic that Brian Chesky was saying our biggest issue is that we need more properties. We need more properties. We need more properties on the platform. And from those numbers that he was quoting, it felt like that he needed an endless supply of properties forever, and because he would fill them. Has that changed?
Well, I think that there's two things. In general, as a space, I think we're a lot bigger than pre-COVID, and we're gonna stay bigger even if we go into a recession. What a lot of people, especially the ones that came into the industry recently, don't realize is that the last 2 years have been really exceptional. There has been so much pent-up demand, and a lot of these people got a lot of money during the pandemic with stimulus checks and unemployment, more money than they would have had when they were working. But on top of that, they also had a lot of free time, especially in 2021. So it almost created like the perfect storm, and Brian from Airbnb was probably right at that time when the pandemic hit. Yeah, everybody canceled, of course. Most Airbnbs and the homes were sitting empty in the Orlando area. Then after a few months, we saw that like coastal markets and mountain markets where you don't have a lot of people around you, we're really killing it. Everybody wanted to get out of their house, but they didn't want to come to a city, to an urban location, or to Orlando for that matter, and be in a theme park with hundreds of thousands of other people. So those markets really exploded very early after the first few months in the pandemic. So then after that, people had like, hey, I've been to the beach and the mountains enough. I want to go back to locations where there's other people. So we have seen in Orlando like months or almost a year that we've never seen before. You probably also have heard about Disney raising prices like every few months and people complaining about it being too expensive. And I agree with them, but the reality is there's still a 2 hour wait line for every single ride at Disney, even in slow months like September and October. So they are raising prices because they want every guest to have a good experience. They're waiting in line for 2 hours. It's not a good experience. So there is such a big demand and pent-up demand as well from international travel. Borders have been closed for a while in the US. So all those people are finally able to travel again in 2022. So they all came into the space, and for a lot of short-term rental operators, that has been their reference, their normal, because they started recently, so they think, hey, this is what it's always going to be. Now, it is going to slow down, of course, but I still think that we're going to be at a good overall level, unless it really goes down the drain with recession and firings or war or whatever. That's something else. But if everything else stays relatively stable, I think we're going to go back to 2019 levels of occupancy. Still think that ADRs will be higher because of inflation, and a lot of property owners are probably going to get out of the market in the next few months or years, or convert to long-term rentals. So the market is going to stabilize, but it will be painful, and it may take a while before we're there again.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. You said there that your thinking is that we'll go back to 2019 levels of occupancy. But what we're also saying, though, is that there is potentially an oversupply of property. So either some of that property is going to need to fall out of the market, the prices might get driven down, and you'd imagine that you wouldn't have more demand than you would have back in 2019. So the supply of customers is what I'm saying, or guests, is going to be maybe the same as what it was back there. You've got an oversupply of properties. Is that how you're thinking?
Yeah, so it may be painful until we get through that correction. So there's probably gonna be owners or properties that are not gonna make a lot of money anymore. They're gonna have to lower their prices, and that will put pressure on everybody else too. So we're definitely gonna see a correction on there, and it may take a while, but the market always corrects itself. We have seen that if you follow numbers from Airbnb, even in the pandemic, in a matter of months, you saw the supply go down with tens of thousands of homes every month here in the Orlando area. So that's pretty quickly. All those properties were sitting empty. These owners had mortgages to pay, so they just got a long-term tenant in there as fast as they could, because they were thinking it's better to have at least some money than no money at all. And it's not just no money coming in, you also have expenses. You need to pay your electricity, your AC, your pool clean, even if the property is empty. So they just wanted to have them filled as soon as they could. But then they saw like that demand and rates going up, so they all switched back to short-term rentals. And I think we're going to see something similar over the next few months. What I've seen here in the Orlando market, a lot of properties also got sold. Owners that bought 4, 5, 6 years ago, they saw a huge opportunity to almost double their investment and selling the property. And what is different than all the prior years is that you saw a lot of owners that wanted to self-manage. So we did lose quite a few properties to owners that said, no, I'm not going to work with a property management company. I'm going to put my home on Airbnb myself. Probably because all the TikTok channels and Facebook and Instagram gurus that sold that.
Because of us.
So
we're creating our own problem, Dennis.
Exactly. And it was easy. Everybody could fill up their property over the last few months, especially in 2020 up until the summer. just having a listing on Airbnb would generate an amazing return. But then after the summer, we did see that slowdown in many areas, and a lot of these owners started to panic. A lot of them were only on Airbnb, I think, because that's a channel they knew from the beginning. Now they're looking into other channels, but it becomes a lot more complex to manage. You need software to sync your listings. You need different systems to respond to guest inquiries. There's different payment system. You need to keep your prices in sync. So what we see now is like they're coming back to professional property managers like us because they need help. They've had some great months, but now they just don't know what to do anymore, and they don't have the time to do it because they have other jobs where their main income is coming from. So you need professional assistance from property managers again. And I think that's the first step that the market is going to change, and that we're probably going to see some owners pulling out in the near future.
Yeah, so that sort of passive income dream that a lot of influencers have talked about, there's some in particular that I think of, the reality starts to bite where, hold on, my place is empty for 3 months or 6 months and I just don't know what to do. Apart from put up another video saying, hey, things aren't going so well, or pretending that everything's okay when it's actually not. And then you go back and you're all right, cool, I'll go to get it done professionally, and maybe they'll save it. One thing that I've got, which is a question which I've got, which is interesting, is where you're at 350 properties, you have better visibility over what's going on across one market or across several markets, and you can see patterns quicker than others can. For those that don't know, you've got tools like AirDNA and Transparent that will give you more visibility over data to make some decisions as to what you need to do. But if you've got one property, so what Casiola might find is that there's a 10 percentile of properties that just aren't performing well. And then you can actually figure out whether it's an issue with the property, whether it's an issue with your marketing, whether it's an issue with the market overall. So you've got that visibility. But as an individual owner, you might not know where your issues lie. Maybe it's you're onto a dud and you need to get rid of this thing and get it professionally managed as quick as you can. Maybe you need to switch into a long-term rental. What does someone do if they've got one property or 5 properties, they find that it's not performing well enough? And of course, apart from coming to you and saying, hey, what do I do? What would your tips be for the people in that category that aren't sure what to do, and they're hearing about this Airbnb bust, they're looking at their numbers going, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Yeah. Are they in trouble? What do they do? How do they figure out what to do next?
So I think it's very important, whether you're small or large, is looking at market data, as you mentioned. And there are many tools. One that you didn't mention that we use a lot is key data, because we don't control the market. We may think that we do great, but then if you look at the market and you see that everybody else is at a higher occupancy or higher ADRs, you actually have to realize that you're losing money, although you think that you're doing great. So we always look at the market and we try to outperform the market. Even if you compare yourself, your own performance year over year, that doesn't tell the whole picture. For example, last year, August was very slow for us, and this year it has been so much better. So if we just look at those numbers, we may think like, oh, we're doing amazing. But you need to compare with the market, because if the rest of the market is at the same or higher level than you, or at a higher ADR, you need to adjust and make sure that you get to that same level. So my advice would be, look at numbers, at market data that you have available. The tools that you mentioned are great, and it's so important to analyze them. And other than that, there's still a lot of things that you cannot do by a tool, and it's just the old school work in comparing and seeing what other hosts are doing, comparing like fees, for example. If everybody's cleaning fee is at $100 and yours is at $300, you're not going to see that in any of the tools that you mentioned, but it may be a big reason why your property is not booking. Same thing with amenities. How do your photos, your description look? There's a lot of things that you can do besides price to optimize a listing. Joining promotions on Airbnb or other channels work really well. So it's really labor intensive to do all those things, and we have people that do this as a full-time job every single day. They do tests, they try other photos, other descriptions, they check other boxes, and after a while you see a pattern, and you can apply that to other properties. As an individual owner, you're gonna have to do that with your property and see what works and what doesn't work.
I just before we move on, just want to get the name of the data tool that you said, and could you spell it out for me?
Yeah, it's a key data. So key like a key, EY, and then DATA.com.
So keydata.com, folks, if you want to have a look at that tool. The other two that I mentioned was Transparent and AirDNA. A lot of pricing tools like Wheelhouse and Price Labs will also have comp sets that you can look at, which can be quite useful to figure out how well you're tracking. And like you said, what you're trying to do is you're trying to find overall market trends and just see where you're plotting based on consumer demand. And if consumer demand has dropped significantly, then you'll know that could be the reason why you're going wrong. But if demand has gone up and you're not filling, then you've got a problem as opposed to the market. So there's just different things. You're trying to make data-driven decisions so you can figure out what's going on. And if you were to sit down with a property manager like Casiola, they would actually look at their stuff and know back to front what's going on, and give you some advice as to whether to get rid of it, stay with it, whatever, or get them to manage it for you. So that's the advantages of a property management company. So I'm conscious that we're getting into the weeds, and we're getting towards the end of the episode. I do like to keep them a little bit shorter. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is, okay, so you would agree that we're in a much riskier environment right now, and that you need to make some provisions as a business to make sure that you're robust enough to survive it. Kind of like COVID, right? We didn't know what was going to happen. We need to do some things to make sure that our business is protected. One, are you planning for that? And two, what are some of the different strategies that you're thinking about right now that you might implement or that you are implementing already?
Yeah. So important, I think, is that you are on all the big channels and not just dependent on one channel like an Airbnb. Because when they did their update, I think last summer, with their special categories, I think a lot of us also felt that most of our homes are not that exceptional. They are not on the top of a mountain, or they're not in a tree or on a boat. And Airbnb has been really pushing those unique stays, which is probably great for owners that do have a unique property. But for everybody else, you get less visibility. So that shows that it's so important that you have to be on other channels. And they may all go on the same route, of course, so you have to be prepared for that and always do things to make your property stand out. But we always see trends in our channel mix. So one year it's a certain channel that is really killing it. Like I mentioned, for us, when we just started in 2014, Booking.com was actually our biggest OTA, our biggest channel. And then we started with Airbnb, and they just killed it. Airbnb during the pandemic got up to, I think, a scary 65% of our bookings. It was actually so high that we just had to jack up the rates on Airbnb, because we don't want any channel to be consistently over 30-35% of our channel mix. So one of the things that we really have seen working very well lately is Booking.com. One of the frustrations of a lot of property managers was the whole payment system, a lot of declined credit cards, fraudulent bookings, cancellations, and so on. But at the beginning of this year, they introduced payments by booking.com, and that basically solved all those issues that we had before completely with booking.com. And we see now that we have a much better conversion than before. So now Booking.com is actually taking over the market share that we're losing from Airbnb. Same thing with Marriott. I know not everybody can get on Marriott, but Marriott has been a channel that has been performing very, very well for us too in the Orlando market. So my advice would be always try out new channels. We focus on our top 5 channels because it's also spend a lot of time on those channels, optimizing them. It's not good enough to just use a channel manager and publish them everywhere and then sit back and relax. You really need to go into those listings and optimize them manually in each channel. Make sure that all the boxes are checked for that specific channel. That your content score is.
That doesn't sound very passive to me.
It does not. It is absolutely not. And our distribution manager, yeah, I sometimes feel bad for her because, yeah, those channels every single week they come up with a new feature somewhere, a new box to click, a new amenity, a new cancellation policy. And yeah, the PMS or channel managers are usually not quick enough to follow suit, and you need to go in and check those boxes. Like Airbnb, for example, rolled out the views in the past few months, so you can now mark it as ocean view or city view or yeah, I don't know what else they have. They have like 5-6 different options. Well, those are very important features to check if your property has an ocean view or lake view and you don't check that box. Obviously, if someone else does check that box, they're going to get more bookings and you're going to lose bookings, although you may have an amazing view, you just don't show up in the rankings. So it's something that never ends. You constantly need to work on and keep yourself up to date about what's going on. Earlier this week, Airbnb announced their winter release. So again, you're gonna have to go through all these announcements, see what works for your property, and be on top of that. Don't be the last one to check that box. Make sure that you're the first one because you're just gonna get more visibility. And it's going to result in more bookings, and that's for all the channels. The same thing. Try as many channels as you can, and make sure that you really put the time and effort in them, and run promotions, create extra visibility, use the tools that they give you to perform better.
Got it. And there's going to be one final question, and I'd be remiss not to mention this one. Direct bookings in this whole storm. Give it to me.
Yeah, so I'm probably not the right person to ask this question to, because Orlando, and I mentioned this before in other sessions, we are very, very dependent on OTA bookings. Only 5% of our bookings here in Orlando is direct. Even with all the branding that we do, the visibility, the website, we do SEO, we spend a lot of money on our website, we do email campaigns, and still it's only 5%. So even in times of recessions, I mean, if there's less demand, it's also going to be harder to get direct bookings. But of course, customers that book with you every year, year after year, and you can keep them with you, that's really going to help you get through that harder period that may be coming up. So yeah, make sure that you guys have an amazing experience. Try to lock them in again for next year if it's a recurrent destination where people would come back every year. Don't wait for it. Come up with promotions. If you book before you check out this year, you get like an extra discount, because once you have them locked in, they're much more less likely to cancel again, and that's one less booking you need to get from another channel. So yeah, do everything that you can to get those direct bookings, but also know that it may be harder to get them if the market turns and there's going to be less demand.
I love it. Dennis, I'm not going to ask any more questions for today. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insights. I appreciate your knowledge. You know, like you really, there's not that many companies that have 350 properties. There's just so many property management companies, but to get to the size that you are, one, you should be super proud of, and for us as an audience, it's great to be able to get some insights and some views as to what your thoughts are. Folks, if you are listening, make sure that you give us a like and a subscribe. It makes a huge difference and lets us get great people to interview onto the show. Make sure that you check out Casiola. If you are in any of the areas that they operate in, then make sure that if you do have any worries or concerns, that you get in touch and they can at least guide you in whichever way they see fit. Dennis, are there any final words that you would like to close us off on, or are we good to go?
We're good to go. Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun, and I know we can talk for hours and hours about everything. But yeah, don't be too worried either. Find a better way to get those bookings. There's always going to be winners and losers in any downturn. And if you get through the end of it, you're going to come out stronger. And yeah, I think we have such an amazing future in front of us. The space has grown. More and more people use short-term rentals, and that's not going to change, not even in a recession.
Yeah, beautiful. And look, my two key takeaways is one, data and tools. You need to look at that. There's three actually. The other one is a channel manager, and then the last one is you're gonna have to work. That's the simple part of the equation. You gotta work this, and you gotta figure it out. Dennis, thank you so much once again. Have a fantastic evening.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.